So during the Super Bowl, there was a new there was a not necessarily new trailer, but new 30-second ad spot for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And before that, there was this article from Variety. Tom Cruise says he would pass out from not getting enough oxygen while filming Mission Impossible plane stunts. And so in this video, I want to focus on the problems that are plaguing the Mission Impossible movies, particularly the later ones, not necessarily the first three. And I'm just going to tell you what it is right off the bat before we get into the meat and potatoes of the article here. I think the biggest problem with the Mission Impossible movies since 2011's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is the fact that they choose to focus more on the big stunt of the movie rather than anything and everything else in that movie. But let's get into the article here. Tom Cruise said there were times when he passed out from a lack of oxygen while filming airplane stunts for Mission Impossible. Quote, "When you stick your face out of an airplane going over 120 to 130 miles an hour, you're not getting oxygen," Cruise said in an interview with Empire. "So I had to train myself how to breathe. There were times I would pass out physically. I was unable to get back into the cockpit." The Mission Impossible films have seen Cruise climb the Burj Khalifa, that was in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, that was the fourth movie, jump a motorcycle off a cliff, and cling to the roof of a moving train. I believe that last one was the most recent. That was Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I still have not seen. Director Christopher McQuarrie says in the franchise's latest installment, Final Reckoning, the stunts get even crazier with one undisclosed moment making him, quote-unquote, want to puke from the stress. Quote, "There are stunts in this movie that will melt your brain," McQuarrie said. That there would be a day in Africa, any day in Africa, where Tom would go out and do something that topped anything he had ever done before. While it may sound like hyperbole, McQuarrie is hardly joking. Back in January, the director recalled that during a Final Reckoning preview screening, an audience member said they almost had a heart attack while watching a particularly intense stunt sequence. Quote, "We had a small screening and someone said I was suffocating throughout the entire sequence. I almost had a heart attack," McQuarrie said. "And I thought, I guess we did something right." See, getting back to my point of the problem with the Mission Impossible movies choosing to focus on the stunts above all else. Okay, let's examine Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which is the fourth movie. It's a great Mission Impossible movie, one of the best movies in the series. Now, I'm going to come out and I'm just going to say that in my opinion, I have not seen Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. So I'm going to be talking from Mission Impossible up through Mission Impossible Fallout, which was the sixth one that came out in 2018. I believe that the only bad Mission Impossible movie out of those first six movies was Mission Impossible 2. And I know, and I do know the story that, you know, John Woo wanted to make it a 3-hour movie, but then Paramount forced him to cut it down, and so you're left with like this 2-hour version that makes absolutely no sense. And you know, and before I see the inevitable question in the comments of will there ever be a John Woo cut of Mission Impossible 2? Probably not. But anyway, let's go back to Mission Impossible 4, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Right, it's the reindeer games of Mission Impossible movies. Right, it's the movie. It's where, you know, anything and everything that can go wrong did go wrong. And that aspect of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was great, is that it wasn't the smoothest mission for the IMF team. But the problem is that no one talks about that when they bring up Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. All they talk about is, oh yeah, that's the movie where Tom Cruise rappelled down the side of the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. Okay, then we get to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Again, another decent outing for another decent Mission Impossible movie, but no one really remembers the story. In fact, I could ask, you know, any of you guys that watch the Mission Impossible movies, who were the Syndicate? You're probably scratching your heads right now, like, yeah, who were the Syndicate? You know, they were basically the Spectre of the Mission Impossible movies. They were set up at the end of Ghost Protocol, then they were expanded upon in Rogue Nation, but again, no one remembers anything about Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, other than, oh yeah, that's the Mission Impossible movie where Tom Cruise was hanging off the side of a fucking plane as it was taking off. And there was a big like 8 to 10 minute YouTube video released at the time, just showing that one stunt of the movie, and that one stunt of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation came out before the official trailer. They did the same thing with Mission Impossible Fallout. It's, oh yeah, this is the one where Tom Cruise is going to do a halo jump. And there was nothing else about the movie. The problem with focusing on the stunt work over everything else is that you have to keep one-upping the stunt. Okay, you've now rappelled from the tallest building in the world. You can't do that ever again. So what do? Well, let's hang off the side of a plane that's going to take off from runway. Okay, now you've done that. You can never do that again. What do you do to one up that? Oh, we're gonna do a halo jump, which is a really high parachute drop from like 25,000 feet. Okay, great. You can't do that again. What's the next thing you do? Well, the next thing we do is we're gonna have Tom Cruise ride a dirt bike off the side of a mountain and go into a parachute sequence. Okay, great. What's the next stunt after that? That's all anyone focuses on with the Mission Impossible movies. They just focus on the stunts. What's going to be the big stunt of the movie? That should have never been the marketing behind the movie. And to be fair, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol did not really market the rappel off the side of the Burj Khalifa. The marketing of the stunts first and the movie second really started with Rogue Nation. But because everyone is so focused on the stunt and what that big stunt is going to be, in my opinion, it takes away from the rest of the movie, because all anyone is going to be watching for is the plane stunt, is the one where Tom Cruise hangs off the side of a plane as it's taking off from the runway. Well, guess what? That's right. That's the very beginning of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And you're creating an audience expectation that they're just going in to just watch the stunt. They're just going to want to watch the halo jump. They're just going to want to watch the motorcycle off of the side of the mountain going into the parachute sequence. They're not watching the Mission Impossible movies for anything else. Instead of just leaving the stunt work in the movie and just letting the word of mouth build, where if they never showed the plane stunt in Rogue Nation prior, imagine the word of mouth after, like, post opening weekend, basically with headlines something akin to Tom Cruise is one crazy ass motherfucker, because here he is in a movie hanging off the side of a plane, and then you can play into that post opening weekend and go, no, that was all real, that was not green screened, and then you release that behind the stunt. It would have been even bigger going into the second weekend, the third weekend, the fourth weekend. That would have added overall to the word of mouth. But the problem is that they're blowing the stunts too early. And I think Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has learned that lesson, because they really haven't shown what the big stunt in Mission Impossible, the final reckoning will be. Because again, how many people just went to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation to just watch Tom Cruise hang off the side of a plane as it was taking off of the runway? Like I said, that's the very beginning of the movie. And there's no other stunt in that movie that tops that one. Maybe other than the free dive where he has to hold his breath for 6 minutes, but to most people, that free dive sequence where he holds his breath for 6 minutes is not gonna compare to the plane taking off. And then again, Mission Impossible Fallout, because of the success of Rogue Nation, decided to market the halo jump. How many people just went in just to watch the halo jump, and that was it? It diminishes all the other stunt work in the movie. Like, no one talks about the final helicopter chase where, supposedly, like, Tom Cruise himself learned how to fly a helicopter so that he could do the helicopter chase himself. But no one talks about the helicopter chase. They all focus on the Halo jump. And I know I've dragged this video out longer than it probably needed to go, so I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm gonna end it off with this. The Mission Impossible movies choosing to focus on one big stunt of the movie has caused an unfortunate side effect. This is basically the TLDR of the video. The TLDR. The Mission Impossible movies choosing to focus on one big stunt of the movie, it doesn't matter how early on it comes, has greatly diminished the rest of the movie as a result. Right? Like, okay, again, TLDR, the Halo jump in Mission Impossible Fallout takes away from the ending helicopter chase, because all anyone focused on was the one and only Halo jump. Will the Mission Impossible movies like Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, Dead Reckoning Part 1, and The Final Reckoning be revered down the line? Unfortunately, that's something that only time will tell. Were these big stunts just gimmicks to get people in the theater, but they had no staying power? Again, I'm not going to answer that question, because that question, unfortunately, can only be answered in time. And I'm talking like within the next 5 to 10 years. This is not going to be an answer that's going to reveal itself really until at least at that point.